Laying out for this wall. Many people don't like to lay out on the flat, and for an easy build, I might lay out on edge, but I've pretty much always laid out on the flat. One thing I do like about laying out on the flat, especially for customs, is leaves you lots of rooms for, lots and lots of room for notes. So I've got a rough opening here, 77 by 26.5 with a rip sill, and that just I know what I've got to do with my R-zip for that, and we'll get into that later. We're sheathing our walls today with Zip R9 from Uberwoods. So what we have is the traditional 7/16 zip that's laminated on 1.5 inches of polyiso. And there's a couple little things that they've done to make our lives easier. They have this tongue and tongue system. So basically our panels are automatically spaced. And they've set it up so that they interlock together. Now, quite often when I'm checking out other job sites or whatever, or visiting other people, sometimes I'll see a line of spray foam in between sheets, and that's because they have a gap. Now the key here to reducing that so that you don't have that problem is you want your tongue and tongue to line up consistently, and the easy way to do that is to keep your writing all going the same direction. Now I know it says this zip system here and it says zip system here, but if you notice on our wall, we've got the 30-year system, the 30-year system, and the 30-year system, and they're all pointed the same direction. Doesn't have to necessarily be the 30-year system the right way when you stand it up. It could be the water resistive air barrier protection. Doesn't matter, but you either pick like the small hashtag zip system or the water resistive, and that is, you orientate that to be right side up. You stack all your sheets in that order, and the tongue and tongue is going to line up properly, and you're not going to have gaps in your insulation. We have Majvest here sandwiched between our single and double top plate. Now, quite often I use Myrex for this detail, but I'm using Majvest for a particular reason today. The reason we sandwich it is when our trusses sit down here, we don't want the truss to slide or damage this membrane when we're setting them. When it's sandwiched in between, it's protected, and we can actually tie our air barrier to our zip outboard and then tie it to our air barrier, which is going to be Myrex inboard. Now you're going to say, wow, this is a lot of Majvest over here, but there's a reason for it. So in this section here, basically right over top of where I'm standing, we have a storage loft or a storage mezzanine. And we've got our 14-inch floor trusses are going to sit on top of here. And when we stand this, I want to be able to bring the Majvest up over the floor truss, back in underneath the bottom plate, and then wrap up and tie in with our actual roof trusses. And the reason we have these floppy bits, in case it's not clear, is I'm going to tie my air barriers together. So this is going to eventually tie into my zip, and inboard here, it's going to tie into my Myrex. As you can see, I'm taking my time nailing. The reason for taking your time is I want consistent nailing. I want my nails to be, for lack of a better term, as close to flush as possible. Actually, I have to adjust that one. This is what I'm looking for right there, just to have it perfectly flush. I'm not going to worry about liquid flash or taping that head. If you have an overdriven fastener, you can liquid flash it or tape it, but really you're not going to have any air or water penetration through an overdriven fastener. So I'm laying out for my trusses, and I'm doing them for 2 foot on centers. So instead of marking the 2 foot, I'm marking 3/4 back, transfer my line down onto the top plate. We'll cover the X with a truss when we do it. And the reason I'm doing this right now is it's super easy. I'm able to stand, walk easily. Yes, I do have to bend over, but it's far easier than moving a ladder around or trying to walk a plate while I'm laying out or setting up staging or scaffolding to do this. So easy right here, hard once the wall stood up. And this goes back to understanding where your measurements come from, what center is for what you're doing. And again, take the easy way whenever you can. We're getting started on our rake wall here today, and one of the key points you have to remember when you're getting started is when you're figuring out that first stud length, you have to remember that on a rake wall, because of the way your plates go down, your plates come down on an angle, you're going to actually have to reduce that length by more than 4.5 inches. So traditional wall like this, 3 inches for a double top plate, 1.5 inches for your bottom plate, you reduce it 4.5. When your double top plate comes down on an angle, that angle actually adds up to more than 3 inches. Now there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can do the math, you can stack up your plates and just measure across that. One way I really like to explain it is I know I've got a 512 plumb on this particular build because that's the roof. So I'll draw that line. Then I'll come across and I will scribe a 3-inch line. If you really want to sort of make it come home, is I'll draw the square line where the stud would be coming up. And then when you measure on the angle, you have more than 3 inches. So we're 3 1/8 all day long. I'll probably knock an extra 1/8 off for the rake wall, just for any deviations in that truss that sits up there.